Kindness is the most powerful tool that we all have to live better, work better, and feel better. But what is kindness? Join us for conversations with inspiring leaders about what kindness means to them and how it's manifested as a strength in their lives and careers. This episode of On Kindness is brought to you by KindWorks AI, an enterprise platform helping leaders unlock the full potential of their people through kindness. Be sure to click follow on this podcast so as not to miss future episodes. In today's episode, I'm speaking with Stina Borth, the founder and CEO of Keymaker Services. Her journey is marked by a blend of her sharp insight and compassionate understanding of human dynamics. Stina and her team specialize in optimizing the cognitive abilities of employees and leveraging the unique dynamics of individuals and teams to improve workplace efficiency and harmony. Stina's contributions to the field have been recognized with the 2023 Brilliance in Education Award, highlighting her dedication to advancing corporate dynamics and inclusivity. Her impact transforms cultures by creating nurturing and forward-thinking environments where all employees feel valued and empowered. I'm excited to speak to Stina today as we explore the intersection of kindness, neurodiversity, and inclusivity. Well, Stina, I'm super excited to be chatting on your perspectives on kindness today. I will start the podcast how I really always start this conversation, and that is, how do you think about defining kindness?
So kindness really is being able to see another person in their complexities and include all of the identities that are housed within them. Choosing to have friendly interactions with them, choosing to provide generosity in your time and forgiveness and patience, tolerance, and really to be inclusive in any way that you can of every part of that identity within them. And then also just to consider that each individual has this hidden story that they carry with them that we don't need them to disclose, but that is present with us within each of the interactions that we have. And we just want to honor that exists. To me, that sounds like kindness.
Very interesting. I love it. I wrote down a couple of things you said there. And I think the very first one, just like seeing complexities, I think that's a really interesting way to think about it, because we are all complex human beings. And then you touched a little on the end that everyone has a hidden story. Like, how do you think about going in and you're just meeting somebody for the first time and having that perspective of, the complexities, because complexities are complex?
Right. Well, I think about when you're first interacting, really being observant of what kind of language are they comfortable with? What are their nonverbals that they're giving you, as in maybe it's space, maybe it's, how long are their answers? What are they comfortable in interacting with? And then just honoring that, as well as I love to use the phrase, tell me more, and opening it up and just letting somebody share what they are seeing as something that they want to share with somebody else, they want to connect. So really what that is that I'm saying, tell me more, or would you mind telling me more? It's saying, I want to connect with you and I'm opening myself up to receive whatever it is that you'd like to share. So giving them the control.
Amazing. I love that. Tell me more is so simple and yet so powerful, I think. And so I think your definition of kindness is a unique perspective, and that seeing the complexities, and then you use the word choose several times. So then a choice to whether it's generosity or, listening. Can you talk a little bit about how you came to define kindness the way that you just did?
It came through really thinking through different experiences that I've had where I could say, hey, that was really kind of somebody. So choosing to have interactions in a friendly manner with me, or me choosing and saying that, I'm not really receiving kindness right now, but I'm going to choose to be friendly in my interaction. Because we don't always have to get to the end result. It is a choice of which way you go. And then the generosity is of giving to somebody else is extremely kind in my view. And I'm not really a gift person, like as in here, give me a gift, but I find the most value in the gifts of time and being, giving grace when I've, maybe misstepped or made a mistake, patience. As somebody that's neurodivergent and time awareness is a struggle, I really feel the generosity of patience and kindness in that. And then tolerance of whether it's a little annoyance or a difference, because if we can hold in that space, that discomfort of where we activate tolerance, that's a lot of growth from there. And I think that all comes from somebody having and choosing to have a kind heart, choosing to have a kind approach.
Absolutely.
I believe in that.
Well, you hit on a lot of words. We talk about inclusion at the workplace a lot, but then these words of grace and patience and tolerance and how they all tie in. Can you talk a little bit about why you in your work have chosen to focus on this aspect of business, and then specifically how it ties in, working with that idea of neurodivergent and neuroinclusion and the complexities that go with that?
Yeah. So I chose to focus on this area of business because I really find it to be the root of connection, to be the root of success of business, of profitability, as well as sustainability. We ultimately, the best business comes through kindness and connection with each other. The strongest business relationships are based in that kindness and that connection that's been nurtured and will continue to be nurtured through the years. It's when we take the time to really develop that and see the humanity, and then use humanity as our base, as our medium, to then pursue a common goal together. And that becomes community. And so when we think about that, I'm thinking through really the hierarchy of needs. And how do we provide that as a community to each other? How are we creating safety? How are we creating, the ability for shelter and water, those basics, and then getting to that connection and belonging? That all plays a part in business. I mean, really, if we string it through, and we don't get to it without understanding how to interact with each other. And a huge part of that is our nervous system. And that is really where I started geeking out and going, oh, so if we know about our nervous system, we have awareness. So mind you, we know that the greatest leaders, the ones that are most successful, are first off very self-aware, and they practice awareness of others as well, and their teams and their organizations. That's how we get change, and that's how we move forward and have innovation. But part of that awareness is understanding, how is my system, how is my brain working? How do I process information? How do I communicate information? What are things that I need to do to make sure that this machine, that my greatest asset, is at peak performance? And so when I started doing research earlier on, I didn't really have the terms of like the nervous system, neurodiversity, neuroinclusion. I didn't have all that. But what I did know is that I saw patterns in the best practices for mental health maintenance that I was hearing from practitioners and professionals in many different walks, whether it was psychiatry to educators to practitioners and business owners. What I learned was that there wasn't enough education, and they all agreed there wasn't enough education and accessibility and inclusion. And so that led, of course, when I look at it back now, I go, of course, I ended up going into educating and training of how to regulate and maintain your nervous system, and how to be productive and really perform at your peak level by providing access and including everyone in it. So neurodiversity and neuroinclusion has given me the vehicle to really put all that into one place and keep working on moving the needle forward.
Absolutely. And I think it's interesting that the idea of self-awareness that goes into that in the stories that you just told, but then going back to what you said about kindness in the beginning of saying, like, I see the complexities, like I see you as a person. And then you mentioned, the self-awareness of a leader is what makes a great leader. Can you talk a little bit about how that balance of self-awareness as a leader, why that makes a great leader, and then how you've seen great leaders implement that idea of self-awareness? And then you said self-awareness for themselves, but also that idea of self-awareness for how they interact and see others.
Right. And I think they tie together with what they first said about seeing the complexities in the other person. As a leader, if you choose to enter into that strength and that vulnerability of self-awareness, to really explore that and be okay with seeing every piece of it and then addressing it. And then the next level would be that you're going to use your own experience and you're going to model and you're going to demonstrate and normalize that. It's really important to normalize that with your team, that you are managing your nervous system in order to be productive, that this is completely normal. When I walked into the office today, that construction over there, oh my gosh, it was so loud. I need to take a minute. My ears are ringing. I can feel that headache coming on. This is normalizing this. You know, we've heard things like this. And so when you share that out and then you put into practice, what's the next step for regulating your nervous system? Maybe it's, I'm going to, put earbuds in, or I'm going to take a few minutes of calm, take a couple breaths. I mean, the Marines do box breathing, for heaven's sakes. Why don't we do that when we go into a meeting? We know it works for regulation. But if we start talking about it and make it something that is okay for the leader to do, then it's okay for those that are following that leader, that leader is supervising over as well. I think that's really, and if they're able to give that vulnerability, that really is strength. I think we all know that too, is that in vulnerability, there is strength, and there is a lot more respect there than if there's nothing shown and somebody doesn't share any inner part of themselves.
Absolutely. So it kind of works. Sometimes we call some of the examples that you've given self-kindness too, of, taking that moment for yourself. Can you talk a little bit about how you think about that aspect as it relates to kindness? And it's interesting, we started this call, before we started recording, of saying, you knew you needed this weekend, then just a break for yourself, and kind of how that self-kindness and self-awareness ties in with everything that you've just been talking with, especially as a leader.
Yeah. Well, it ties in because we all have limits. We all have, and a lot of us that are in that leadership role, we have really high expectations of ourselves, and we will push ourselves past those high expectations until the entire nervous system crashes. And so what we actually need to start doing, and I will say, I don't always practice, but I did practice it this weekend as I felt, you know what, I'm really tired. I'm mentally tired. I've had a lot of mental energy go out. I'm physically tired. Now, what does that mean? How am I going to rework my weekly schedule design, which is something that I always put together a weekly and a monthly schedule design. So the design is ideal. It's not what actually happens. It's called a design for a reason. So actually, that's a really great tip for folks to practice, is start calling your schedule design that can be redesigned as needed. So that self-kindness was for me to go, it's okay if I don't go to the museum to see the art show that I had planned to on Sunday. I feel really tired. I can do that. What can I redesign? I can do that, here. And that's going to allow me more rest so that I can come into this week and feel more prepared to show up as a leader within my team.
Show up the way that you want to show up on a daily basis. No, absolutely. Well, changing a little bit, are there any stories of kindness or acts of kindness throughout your life, your career, that have made a difference and really been memorable, and whether it's how you've thought about living your life, how you've thought about defining kindness?
Mm-hmm. So yes, of course. And I'm lucky enough to have received them. I have several examples. I think in the work example, when one really awesome colleague of mine, we didn't always agree, yet when it came to, it was this moment of kind of, I was going one way and she was going another way. We just had different choices of the work we wanted to do and how I wanted to do it. But she did call out in kindness and recognize the value in my choice in front of and to be witnessed with others on the team. I thought that was extremely kind, because I knew she wasn't exactly, that wouldn't be her choice, but she was honoring and was kind in saying, this is yours, and I see the value in how you're going to do that. I think that is amazing when you can take yourself off and go, I'm going to honor, and not only I'm going to honor, I'm going to name it and state it and say it out loud for others to hear.
Yeah, absolutely.
Another piece of kindness was just when going through a hardship of a loss. I had some really great clients that they just, all they did was honor that there was something going on and just naming it. So sometimes that's the best, I think that's the most kind thing to do, is just to state it and say, I see what's happening and I see you're going through this, and I just want to say that I see it.
Yeah.
So that we're seen, right? We're heard, we're seen. Sometimes that's the kindest thing. And then, it's funny because I'm thinking this, I'm talking out loud and going, oh, heard, seen. The third example that I think of is I was in a meeting once and I could not for the life of me get my chance to speak. I had this like idea. I wanted to share it and I kept trying and somebody kept talking over it, or you're watching for the opportunity of somebody like, here's the 2 seconds there, finally stop talking. Now I'm going to come in. And there was someone that saw that I kept trying and called attention back to just kind of let me have that. They saw the struggle. And I think that is something too, is that comes back to that awareness piece. We're aware of what's going on. If you see a struggle and you can assist by being that voice, by bringing that, that opportunity back for somebody that you can see that's trying so hard to contribute and be part of your team, that's kind. That's extremely kind.
Absolutely. And that ties so well back to how you defined it too, and seen and the self-awareness, but then also the acting on it. And that's a choice. I mean, that person doesn't have to, the first example, she didn't have to recognize you in front of others. That person didn't have to say, okay, it's Stina's turn here. And so that's really amazing examples. I love it. Well, as we're coming up on time, is there anything else just on kindness that you'd want to hit on before we wrap up?
Yeah, I think just our conversation today is to ask somebody to tell you more is a really good rule of practicing kindness. And then it comes back to my company name I picked Keymaker because it talks about making a key to open doors that are locked, ones that you can't find keys for. And so practicing your self-kindness and kindness with others would be to have that mindset of there isn't a key yet, and we're going to make one. Or I'm going to make one so that this can open. And just having that kindness with self to keep that hope and that mindset alive that there will be a way.
I love that, especially because that idea then that's in all of us, you just have to make the choice to make the key, as you said. So I love it. Well, Stina, this has been so fun. Such a pleasure to get to know you throughout this journey, and I'm excited to share our conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us for this conversation on the strength and power of kindness. At KindWorks AI, we help leaders unlock their people's full potential through the power of kindness. We seamlessly increase well-being, productivity, and results. If you're interested in learning more about bringing the KindWorks platform to your team, visit kindworks.ai/demo. And if you enjoyed this conversation, follow us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts to not miss future episodes.